Welcome to Living Free. Oh, wait, let's do the music. Hold on a second, guys. I forgot. It's over here. It's fun to do the music. Let's do it.
The place to be is living free in Tennessee.
Welcome to Living Free in Tennessee, where we talk about building the life you choose on your terms. Today is Monday, October 9th, 2023, and this is episode 802 of Living Free in Tennessee. It's a Monday episode, but it's a pre-recorded episode because we are in Self-Reliance Festival week. So I have a previously recorded episode with Toolman Tim Cook, Brian Alexovich from the Lots Project, Backwoods Butcher, and me talking about content creation and just lessons that we have learned over the time of doing that. And I know you guys are going to love this episode. It was probably one of the best interviews or roundtable discussions I've had all year. And I think you'll get a lot out of it. So if you're on the live stream, you're going to need to listen to the audio podcast for that, or I will put a link after we're done with this to the video that's on my YouTube channel with that discussion. If you're on the audio podcast, it'll just flow straight into that. Okay, what do we got today? Well, we'll start with our featured. Oh, wait, I want to show you something really fun. I've been learning all about lighting. What do you think? I just added a new light. It's called a bar light. So there's a little bit of like on my face a glow, but I can change the color. Now I look green and sick. Now I look blue. Now I look white. So anyway, it's part of the studio. I've been kind of slowly putting together the pieces to build out my studio and fuss with lighting. I'm trying to make it so my glasses, like you can see my eyes through my glasses and that sort of thing. And I have actually two of these bar lights. I'll just bring it in. That's what it looks like. And they're like on the background. I plan to paint this wall behind me black and get some other things in the background. But I was just sort of playing with lighting going into this week. And I have some really cool studio lights that somebody gave me early on in the podcast when I first started doing live video. And usually I have one down here, kind of putting light behind my glasses so you don't see as much. And I need to get curtains on the windows in here. But it's been really interesting just learning more about how to light my studio properly. This is going to spill over into the kitchen studio. And somebody in the live stream said, I love how you're testing it on Spags' Greta. Yeah, I saw Spags this weekend and he gave me the sticker that's hanging up behind me that says, how dare you? Just because I thought it, like, he popped that out on a live stream one time and I cracked up. So before I go into our usual segments, I do want to talk about the Midwest Preparedness Project, which I was at last weekend, and they were super welcoming to me. They made me feel so welcome, and everybody who like walked up and talked to me was very friendly. And it's the first time I've been live at that event. And it's different than Self-Reliance Festival in that like we have 2 tracks going on and sometimes 3 with different speakers and lots of presentations, lots of demonstrations. Theirs is a little bit more laid back where it starts out where you're camping for a few days and they're setting up the event. Like, so anybody can come camp. And then they're setting up a stage and other things. And there's vendors row and that sort of thing. And then on Friday and Saturday, they have classes from the stage, but they also have a child's program going on with different activities throughout. And then some people throw out demonstrations. And there was a guy there who had a like old school telephone demonstration, just showing how communications worked for that, for example. So it was kind of more like a camping hangout thing, but also very freedom oriented. And it set the foundation for good, close relationships, which is the purpose of all of these events. So I'm really glad I made time for that. It was a little bit of a challenge to scheduling wise for me because being gone the weekend before Self-Reliance Festival, as you can imagine, is a little bit tense. But what I did is I just like all last week, as long as I was awake and functional, I was working on Self-Reliance Festival. So I put even more hours in than I usually do. And I made it I did that so that when I left on Thursday and hopped on the plane, I could be 100% present at the event, because my worry was I was going to end up getting there and be like, I have to send this email. I have to answer this text. I have to do this thing. And it worked. I was able to just totally let go. And that is in part thanks to the great Self Reliance Festival staff I have, who are still on the ground when I was there doing the things that needed to be done. So I also got my first good night's sleep in a long time. I slept great there. But it was just a great event, and it reminded me of the importance when you go to events of being present at those events. It can be really hard to let go of work sometimes when you're out of town, because people need things urgently and there's always something urgent going on, right? But when you just put that aside and you're present at the event, you get a lot more out of it. So that was the Midwest Preparedness Project. Anyway, before we jump into the first segment of today's show, I did want to talk about our featured event of today's show, and that is, not surprisingly, Self Reliance Festival, which is in Camden, Tennessee this weekend, Saturday and Sunday. And tickets are $95 right now. And you can get those at selfreliancefestival.com. There is also a Zero to Hero radio class in advance, and that's also at selfreliancefestival.com. You click on tickets, you'll go there. I think there are 2 or 3 seats left. There aren't very many seats left in that. And then I see Homestead Medical is in our comments right now. Homestead Medical is doing an advanced wound care class, and he's only got 3 spots left. So if you want to take that class, you definitely want to get your tickets at selfreliancefestival.com. I also want to thank our 2 sponsors of today's show. The first one is John Pugliano of the Wealthsteading podcast. John is a self-made millionaire. He went from zero to hero in the financial side, and he decided he wanted to be a money manager for people, but he didn't want to go out into the world of money management without becoming a self-made millionaire first, so he could kind of like prove, put his money where his mouth is, so to speak. Well, he also decided, it'd be really cool is sharing what I've learned with folks through a podcast for free, so that anybody can do what I've done. And his podcast is called the Wealthsteading Podcast, and he talks about what he's doing and how he's making his investment decisions and how that fits in the context of the world. They are usually about 15 minutes long, well worth a listen, and very easy to work into your life. Check out the Wealthsteading Podcast on just about any podcast catcher, or go to investablewealth.com and click on the podcast tab and you'll find it there. Our second sponsor of today's show is Discount Mylar Bags. That is a company that is made from somebody who had an idea. And at the Midwest Preparedness Project, there was a lot of talking about what's your role in the community. Do you need to grow all your own food? Do you need to have good relationships? And this guy who started Discount Mylar Bags, Toby, was in a group of folks where he was watching all these really badass prepper folks, like hunters and people who can butcher meat and people who preserve all their food that they grew from the garden. And he was like, I'm kind of like really good at working behind a desk at my job. And he wasn't sure what he had to offer. And then he realized something. All of his friends who were putting up food for storage were spending way too much on their Mylar bags. And he was like, what I'm good at is sourcing things in bulk and passing on those savings to my customers. And so he set up discountmylarbags.com to connect you with the supplies you need to preserve and store food. He also thought, it's important that my customers have the right information for what to get to, how to size their Mylar bags, that sort of thing. So he put together free resources so that you can rethink your strategy of how large of a bag you want. Because you can put supplies into the biggest Mylar bag you can get, but then once that's open, you got to use it up or you got to reseal it, right? With another O2 absorber. How do you size your O2 absorbers for the size bag you're using? That sort of thing. So he has some strategies for making that whole process more successful. That's over at discountmylarbags.com on the right-hand side. Finally, I want to talk about our live stream schedule this week. Tomorrow, 12:30, I'll be live with John Willis from Special Operations Equipment and Risky Krisky. So that's the new person you haven't met on my channel. I think you're going to enjoy it. So definitely be there. And then after that, I head to Self-Reliance Festival. So that's it for the week. There might be some surprise lives coming out of Self-Reliance Festival. There usually are. There usually are. Anyway, with that, we'll go into our segments for today's show. The first one is Tales from the Prepper Pantry. This is where we talk about storing what you use and using what you store. And I always feel like I'm a little behind in the fall when we get towards all of these events that I speak at, because it's like it's the final push of storing things in your pantry if you live off of a homestead and eat seasonally. But at the same time, I'm gone a lot. And so I did manage to restock our vitamins because Tactical and I both use vitamins to help keep our immune systems healthy. It took me 3 weeks from making the list of what was needed to getting that done with all the busyness going on. I am planning meals out of the pantry for Self-Reliance Festival because once I leave, right, I can go out to eat or I can go to the grocery store, but I find that I feel a lot better if I eat the food that we produce here. And so what I'm doing right now is just looking at like what do I have in the freezer and how can I orient that on things that are easy to either like pre-make and reheat or feed to other people. We will end up eating probably a few things from Big Daddy's, which is the gas station at the entrance to SOE and some other places, but I really like to have grab and go meals. And then I stock those in the place where I'm staying, which is an Airbnb. It works really well. So I think what we're going to be having eggs and bacon, of course, and then I probably will have a nice keto chili. I talked to Melissa White today about making me one with my beef that I could just have grab and go in the refrigerator. And then we'll have other, I don't know what's, I mean, I have a venison roast, so maybe some of that. But that'll all be coming out of the pantry as much as possible. And then, of course, I'll bring peppermint tea from the yard and a few other herbs that just help support my immune system because starting now, till next Monday afternoon, we enter the very little sleep zone of event management. And then Tuesday, my plan is to hibernate all day, except for the live stream next Tuesday that we have scheduled with Jason Sparks. But anyway, I do have like we had our first frost on the weather app, but it didn't frost here. But we prepared for our first frost over the weekend on Saturday night. And I have a lot of tomatoes I harvested. I left all the green ones out because I figured like a little bit of frost will kill the vines and then I can go harvest green tomatoes and let them ripen on my counter or fry up green tomatoes in the stir fry. And we still got probably 25 pounds of tomatoes out on those vines that are not ripe. So I'm hoping that we don't have a frost for another couple weeks and we get a few more ripe tomatoes. But that being said, I have a lot of tomatoes in the refrigerator that need to be processed. And I'm going to pull a trick I learned from Geraldine in the Society for Creative Anachronisms when I was doing all that and core them and throw them in the freezer, pre-diced up for making salsa. And then sometime in this winter where I don't feel like building a wood fire and it's not quite cold enough to build a wood fire, but it is kind of cold, I will bip out my canning stuff and can me up some salsa or can me up some tomato sauce and process them that way. Tomatoes are really forgiving in that way. If you're doing sauce or salsa, you can pre-freeze them and then take them out of the freezer and process them later, which means then you're not putting heat into your house at the hottest time of year. Of course, I can outside a lot as well, but right now I actually can inside. It's gotten cold here. And by cold, I don't mean cold, but 40s at night, and 40s at night means that it is time for a wood fire. In fact, we just lit the wood stove for the first time today, and that is part of how somebody in the comments is saying, I should have known you were an SCA chick. I don't do SCA anymore, but I sure used to. Once I moved, I sort of really focused on travel and on music when I was singing in a rock band, and that kind of took me out of SCA for a long time. And then once I thought, hey, I'll get back into SCA, I realized like in Tennessee, I just didn't really find a community here in that place. And it's fine. Like now with all of the work we do in the Living Free in Tennessee community, in the TSP community, in the SOE community. Like that all fills my life up, and I'm not even sure how or when I would find time to go to an SCA event. Plus, I had to have to make all those clothes all over again because I got rid of I have a cloak left right now and a belt. So, not very much in the way of old garb. Anyway, that's my random tangent for the day on the Society for Creative Anachronisms. But I did learn a lot about from scratch living in the SCA because a lot of the reason I was there was to learn how things were done, in medieval times. And that means learning how to do some things from scratch is what that means. We tapped into our last smoked venison roast. So I had 4 venison hams pre-smoked for the spring workshop, and we ended up only serving 1 of them because that's how many we needed to feed everybody who was there Saturday night. And so I ended up with 3 in my freezer. And with this being a busy week, we decided to, it's pre-cooked, right? So it's just like make it warm and serve it. We decided to tap into that. And I try to have a few things in the freezer that are just sort of pre-cooked, grab and go, ready to go. And this is my last venison roast. It's also the last big push event. Like my next event after this is I'm emceeing for a fundraiser, and then I'll be at Jack Spirko's, and then that Jack Spirko's is my last event for the year, and none of that is as busy as the time before Self-Reliance Festival. So we'll be eating on that for the rest of the week. Tactical will eat on it after I'm gone, and then we'll be back to normally programmed living for a little bit when I get back from Self-Reliance Festival. So this is kind of like Tales from the Prepper Pantry in the style of, oh my goodness, we are so busy because the festival takes a lot of planning and a lot of time. So I will say this, like big picture from a pantry standpoint, it's really nice to have a pantry that empowers me in times like this, because although we did buy a bunch of stuff at the store going into this like last 2 weeks before the festival, we also are able to stay on plan and eat what makes our bodies feel good because of how the pantry is managed. So I can just like go in there and source stuff. Now, I also knew that I didn't feel like slicing all my bacon. So we sourced some breakfast meat at the grocery store. I didn't have to, but I definitely am glad I did, because it's been the thing it's one of those tools that's just kept us going. Next up, we have a frugality tip, and this is the first one we've gotten from Dan. So Dan said that his tip is to have Gorilla Tape wherever you go. And the way he does this is he takes like a Sharpie that he's going to have with him anyway and wraps the Gorilla Tape around it multiple times so that he can unwrap it if he needs it. And he said, you just never know when some Gorilla Tape is the difference between driving home and getting towed, which can save you a lot of money and time if you're in a situation where a problem can be fixed with just a little bit of Gorilla Tape. He said it saved his rear end a few times. So it's just an idea of how to have that with you without having a big roll of it in your car. Also, if you have it in a pen and can carry that around with you and don't leave it in your car in the summer heat, that's a great way to make it so it lasts a little bit longer, because Gorilla Tape and other tapes do over time, over exposure to extreme heat or extreme cold, they'll degrade over time. And then what you have is tape you can't use. I love having tape with me when I backpack too. So that's something that actually saved my butt on my last big backpacking trip I did with Mom, where I really needed some tape for something. And I just had a little roll that was rolled up on itself that worked really well. Anyway, next up, we have Operation Independence. This is where we talk about developing local ongoing revenue into our lives. I did something this week, and one of our community members put out that they had extra time, and they were somebody who used to do house cleaning professionally. And with the busyness, I have not kept up on household chores the way I'd like to. And so I decided that for my own peace of mind, it was worth spending money to have somebody set me up for future success, because when my environment is neat and tidy, I do better. Like I make better decisions. I feel more at peace in my own home. So I just would like to say that sometimes under Operation Independence, it's not all about saving money. Sometimes it's about spending money to set a foundation for future success. And this is something where when I talk about integrating frugality into your life, I don't mean find the cheapest thing all the time. Frugality of time is very important. And one way to set up yourself for success is to find ways where you make things um, work out timing wise. And sometimes that means it's not the cheapest option, right? Like my chicken coop was not the cheapest option, but it was a lot of investment on the front end. But because it's semi automated, we are now going out of town. I have a house sitter coming in, and that thing takes care of itself when you're gone for a few days. The only thing we have to worry about is making sure there's enough water, but it takes care of itself. Nobody necessarily has to be there. And that means that investment up front saves me time now, and it's actually saving the house sitter time now, which is a huge help when you have busy times, or if, like, heaven forbid, one of us has to go to the hospital and there's nobody here. Like, well, at least I know the chickens are handled. They're going to be safe. So anyway, that is all of our Monday segments for today's show. Okay, I left a really long and awkward audio break because I need to edit that into the audio podcast later. So that was pretty much everything I wanted to cover today. It was a short episode for the live stream just because I was live recording our usual Monday segments, and then I'm going to splice in an interview that we have already recorded with Toolman Tim, with Brian Alexovich, with Backwoods Butcher, and with myself talking about content creation. As I said, when this stream is done, I will go edit the YouTube and just link y'all to that video, because if you're here right now and have time and have not listened to that one, I highly recommend you do. It was a great conversation. So I'm going to say goodbye for now. Have you been roasting your coffee? Yes, I've been roasting a lot of coffee. In case you haven't seen the posts on Instagram, I did 46 pounds yesterday of all different kinds of coffee, which means I roasted a lot more than 46 pounds yesterday. So it's the roaster is fixed, it's doing well, and orders are up. So it's been fun. I have also been getting some help with roasting because Michelle is in town, and so like she's gonna roast, I think, later this week while I'm at SRF to keep things coming out. So, guys, thanks for joining me. I will drop that link in right now, and then I'll produce the audio podcast, and I will see you tomorrow, and then I won't see you till next week.